Welcome to Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. Thank you so much for joining me today, as this is a Friday podcast episode. And as I was preparing for today's show, I received a very clear message around what is important right now in the higher perspective of it all. And the message is the veil is gone. The veil has lifted, it has been removed and dissolved, and our consciousness has elevated to a point where we're able to see new truths, new frequencies, new understandings that were previously hidden, manipulated, misconstrued, or confusing. And the fact that the veil has lifted is important because not only is Saturn re-entering Aries and staying there until 2028. In fact, this changeover happens today, Friday, February 13th at 7:11 p.m. Eastern Time. But what it signals is that this is closing out a grand cycle of outer planets that have moved through Pisces over the past 30 years. And so we've been working with these Pisces themes and energies in a very strong ongoing way in the collective since Uranus, Chiron, and Neptune all journeyed through Pisces over the past 23 years. We can also add in Jupiter that's moved through Pisces, and of course the fact that Saturn re-enters the sign every 30 years. So we could even go back to the early to mid 1990s. That's the last time Saturn was in Pisces. So I'm going to go through some things here that are important to understand energetically in terms of what has been shifting and changing that has allowed us to grow from these strong Pisces influences that have been in the energy very strongly for a number of decades. And so we have been working with and working through more in our collective subconscious and unconscious over these past number of years. And there are certain things that we haven't been able to see clearly. We haven't been able to fully understand, process, consider, or fully know exactly what we were meant to connect with. An ongoing Piscean influence has affected our filters and our ability to see what we need to see. On the other hand, it's required us to be intentional in developing our intuition, our psychic gifts, our spirituality. It's required us to be more curious and aware of what is going on beyond the five senses, and to know and trust that we are connected to the higher realms and higher frequencies that we can't see. It's also stirred up a lot of themes and energies of our lifetimes and experiences during the age of Pisces, which is part of what we're moving away from as we move more fully into the age of Aquarius. Now, each age is based on where the Earth is in the cosmos, and each age is calculated at lasting about 2,160 years, give or take a few years here or there. So the transition into a new age is about ongoing waves and flows of energy. It doesn't just happen on a certain date. It doesn't just happen with a certain astrological transit. Rather, it's an ongoing movement of new consciousness arriving as previous levels of understanding flow out. And so all of this relates to how our human consciousness is expanding and growing, and how we're coming to see things in a new way. So I feel this is very important right now, right here in February 2026, that you might really see that yes, the veil is gone, and the veil has lifted, because not only are we ready to see new truths from our higher consciousness, but each of these planets has done some important work for us to help us understand more of how we're here to be tuned in, energetic beings, reading energies, emotions, and environments with our psychic senses, and that these transits of these planets have been elevating us to trust it more, even though it has been very confusing, discouraging, and difficult at times. So Uranus was in Pisces 2003 to 2010, and this would have been some very clear, robust openings in your psychic abilities, in your creation, artistic energies, imagination, Maybe you came upon new areas of energy study, psychic development, and higher perceptions that drew you in with a sense of curiosity and then also sparked something alive within you. So that Uranus in Pisces energy was significant for what it was also blasting away in terms of what was no longer you and what was no longer relevant to who you have been becoming. Then in 2010, Chiron entered into Pisces until 2019. And this was an important transit because Chiron in Pisces brings up all of our fears, vulnerabilities, wounds, trauma, grief, and unprocessed emotional energies related to the Piscean themes of being connected to source, that you are always connected to your soul. Yet that Chiron wound brings up how you feel abandoned by God, rejected, left out on your own, perhaps questioning your own divinity, your own gifts, and a sense of who am I or what am I deeply connected to? Can I really trust that if there's been so many difficult experiences in my connection with the divine? And so that Chiron in Pisces journey, 2010 to 2019, was bringing up what you were deeply healing and reclaiming about your innate God self, your innate divinity, and what you came here to love more fully. I'm seeing it as what we had to bring closer into our aura and into our energy field to love it and hold it, even if it was painful, especially if it was painful. And so that Chiron journey was actually also activating anything in your age of Pisces energy field that was requiring you to love and reconnect to source even more and with a renewed trust and hope in your timeless connection. So this would have been a big time, especially for anyone who has their natal Chiron in Pisces. That was your Chiron return. But that would have stirred up where you had to sacrifice yourself and your gifts for the sake of others, where you had to do something for a power that was believed to be outside of you instead of fully embodying the innate power you came in with that has always been within you. So it would have been a deep reprogramming of some kind around how you are God source in human form, and that energy is always with you, always connected to you. Then during that time, we also had Neptune moving into Pisces in 2011 until just last month, January 2026. And we know that this has been an ongoing transit of Neptune in his home sign of Pisces, where he feels the most comfortable, the most powerful, and in his flow. This would have been a deepening into more of what you're capable of in trusting in yourself. This could have been a beautiful expansion of your clairs, your clairvoyance, clairsentience, claircognizance. This would have been a realization that you are also connected to source, and you can trust that even more in yourself, especially during times of change. Neptune and Pisces can bring about big themes of loss, grief, discouragement, melancholy. It can be a reminder that you are separate from source in the human body. And there could have been a longing to return home, or a longing to go back into another energy field where you were always in that essence of unconditional love, compassion, joy, harmony. And part of the assignment of Neptune and Pisces is to bring that energy here into your human reality, to hold and own more of those frequencies more gracefully and effortlessly. Of course, there's many other themes that come up with each of these planets moving through Pisces. I just wanted to highlight some of their themes, but important to note that all of these outer planets moving through Pisces were surely bringing your attention to an area of your chart that has been very unstable, inconsistent, uncertain. It's an area of life that you've probably learned this is just going to leave. This isn't going to work. This is going to be something that only shows up for a certain amount of time, and then it's going to return to the ocean. The Pisces energies are meant to be moving in those bigger flows of life. And this particular area of your chart where you have strong Pisces is where you've had a lot of big lessons, but also a lot of big spiritual growth. That's very important because as the veil has been removed, the veil is gone. And what that means is that there are parts of ourselves that we are seeing clearly and brightly for perhaps the first time in your life, and that it's less hazy and fuzzy. Now, yes, we do have the North Node in Pisces until the end of July, but that North Node is giving you a bump up here to keep growing through these Pisces themes, to keep trusting the process you're in, to allow yourself to be human as you work through these new parts of yourself that you're realizing you've always been connected to and you've always had access to. And so I feel the North Node in Pisces is a hurrah, if you will. It's supporting the graduation and the mastery so that you can continue to navigate this path for yourself with full ownership of your energetic skills, your intuitive abilities, your understandings of your own spiritual guidance system as well. So I feel that this is overall positive. And if you have planets or points in the early degrees of Pisces, specifically 0 to 8 degrees of Pisces, you're going to have some beautiful developments here over the next number of months as that North Node comes through and provides you with fated developments, next steps, and growth opportunities that perhaps you thought were delayed or denied, especially with all these big Piscean transits, again, since 2003. So if you were to look back on your life since 2003, looking specifically at these Pisces areas, there's a lot of goodbyes here. There's a lot of things that just would not have worked. It would not have come together, at least perhaps in the way you idealized it. You learn to be more flexible, more open, perhaps even more grateful. Just grateful for whatever the experience was or whatever you were learning at the time. Because that is one of the highlights of the Pisces energies, is that there's a sense of, I'm just so glad I had that experience when I did. Knowing the energies are going to keep changing, just as I am going to keep changing. You could feel a deep appreciation for what you've navigated here through these Pisces themes. But now, as Saturn moves in to Aries, where it will stay, and as all of these other outer planets are now outside of Pisces and beyond those themes, the veil is gone, and it's time to see yourself and your life in a new empowered place of truth, honesty, strength, and self-empowerment. This means, by the way, you're going to have to hold yourself to new standards, because as the veil is lifted, there are certain qualities, attributes, and energies that won't have a grasp or a hold anymore. They won't gain traction. Now, they did previously when we had planets in Pisces. It's almost like there was something for those belief systems, choices, and actions to grasp onto, especially with Neptune and Pisces. There was a part of ourselves that wanted to believe an illusion. There were parts of ourselves that bought in to certain things as we felt our way through it to determine, does this still resonate? Is this my truth? Is this in alignment? Does this match up with my own spiritual path and trajectory? So we were more open to many things. We were exploring them. We were learning. We were understanding. There has certainly been a heightened focus on spiritual growth since 2011 in the collective. You'll find that in the statistics of more people saying that they are spiritual instead of religious. You'll find that in how people have been very curious about their spiritual beliefs and the higher power powers that they subscribe to. So we've all been spiritual seekers. And as part of that, we've had to undergo deep healing. We've had to look at things in our lives, in our experiences, in our choices. We've seen ourselves through various lenses on our healing journeys. And now we're at a point where many of those understandings are expiring. They're no longer going to be effective. They're no longer going to even feel correct in your personal narrative. More specifically, this means there's going to be a changeover in various terms we use, in things we use to describe other people. You could look at it in terms of all of the spiritual terms that have come to life over the past number of decades, specifically twin flames, divine counterparts, soulmates. Some of those are no longer going to feel like they resonate for you. And it's going to feel like, well, sure, I understand what that means. And yes, I get it in terms of what that's about, but we're going to have new terminology we use. I know that soulmates is pretty timeless. That's been used for decades. So I'm not saying these terms are going away, but we're going to feel like, it doesn't quite fit like it used to, because there's no longer those Pisces idealistic terms that we feel are truthful. Or you could see, that was something that resonated at one time in my life, and now it just doesn't. So that's part of this changeover here. We're going to have new understandings of ourselves and of each other, especially the people in our lives. We're also going to see that there is a big turning away from too many victim-focused narratives. We're kind of realizing, when you become an empowered, self-aware individual, there are things that you take responsibility for. Yes, there are things in your life that definitely relate to being in a victim role or feeling that way. And I'm not saying it's not valid or appropriate. What I'm saying is that we're going to be more acutely tuned in to where those victim narratives are used, especially as a form of manipulation. And we're just saying no more. Here comes my Wonder Woman lasso of truth. And now it's time for you to say what you're responsible for, what you're accountable for. It's time to own your part of a story or what your energy has been learning and moving through. And we're going to be seeking that from one another more readily, because we've heard so many of these false stories, these lies, these manipulative one-sided narratives that are only based on one-sided perspectives. They've never been verified. They don't have many facts to them. It's just whatever someone has conjured up and it's like, well, I'm just going to say this because no one's going to fact check me. Well, actually we are. And here comes that lasso of truth, because the more that you're saying these lies and these half-truths, the more people are going to realize the manipulation tactics in play. This is all part of Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries. And Aries is impatient. Aries is a straight shooter. Aries is highly aware of when things are off and makes fast decisions with quick awareness around what's really going on at the root of the energy. And that's one of the ways that Aries is strong. It relates to that root chakra, which is the root of the energy, the source of where behavior and action comes from. So we're going to have a clear understanding of what is going on in our lives, in our world, and where things are off. So we're all going to have our BS radars on very heavily. And I know that many of you already have, but now there's going to be faster moving decisions. It's sort of like if people can't take responsibility and ownership quickly, then those relationships are over, or those connections aren't going to last, and you're not going to have energy for them, because there's no longer this like drifting through it and we'll just see and let me give them 5 more chances. All of that is what's phasing out, because as the veil has been removed, there is a new sense of what is a priority to you. What is essential for you to live a good life, to love and value your energy, to be strong in who you are and in what you're putting energy towards. You're going to find that there is less and less that pulls you away from the core of who you are. And that's going to feel very strengthening. And I feel for some people, there's going to be like this jolt of awareness. Like, what the frick have I been wasting my time on? Like, this doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. These people certainly don't matter. Like, there's just going to be a new understanding of what is essential and important to you. And it's going to give you life. And so part of the confirmation you're going to have about the veil being gone is that you make faster decisions and have a clear understanding without overthinking or needing a lot of processing time. It's almost like the answer just arrives and you understand what is important or what you need to do. There is more of a connection with your God self now, especially in that root chakra and in your everyday reality that is giving you life and giving you energy to move towards one thing and move away from another. And so this is also where we're going to see these changes in relationships and dynamics, because there's going to be people that you just maybe can't even explain, I just can't be around them, or I'm not interested in that dynamic, or we don't have anything in common, or I'm not sure that I even know what this relationship is about. It's like we're going to start to see things in new ways because it's no longer covered in a veil. And you're going to see the truth of people. You're going to see the truth of those fake friends who think they're so sly. You're going to see the reality of what people really intend, even if they're not openly saying it. In other words, you're going to be able to see people very clearly. And with that veil being gone, it could be ugly. You could see some ugly things in some people that you realize you don't want them and you don't need them. And the relationship is over, because if you require trustworthy people only in your life, then the others will show themselves to the door, right? The exit's over there, and don't forget your umbrella. So this is where there's going to be changeovers in those who are energetically clear and aware, who are tapped into their psychic abilities, and who are walking with integrity and good moral character. And everyone else who thinks they're getting away with something, or who thinks they're being quite sneaky, all of that is going to be revealed, and it's going to be something that people see sooner than later. So one thing to be aware of is that you might look back on your life since 2003 and start to see the changes in these Pisces energies in your life and understand why certain experiences, jobs, events, and people had to go, why they weren't really who they said they were. They weren't in that integrity. They weren't truthful. They weren't honest. And the universe was actually moving them out of your life. Same with anything that maybe you were really locked in on. I'm thinking of jobs. You know, if you thought you had your dream job, or you thought you were going to be with a company long term, and then it faded off or you moved away, there's something there that was actually very divine. And now you could start to see how those pieces come together, especially if you didn't get closure on it, or you didn't know what you were learning. Maybe there's something there that you start to see with new eyes. Now, I also want to recognize that there have been many, many people who came in with strong psychic abilities and intuitive gifts. And you've had these gifts for a number of years, if not your whole life. But maybe you found that since 2003, your intuitive skills and abilities have heightened and increased, and you've learned to trust them. You've learned to work with them. It's all been a part of your spiritual mastery that has also put you ahead of the curve. And I want to give a shout out to those of you who have been navigating this very turbulent energy in the collective. You have been aware of a lot of manipulation and duplicity. You have been spot on with your reading of a person or a situation. And you've also understood that it's important to be quiet, to hold it close, to not make it an issue. You've been aware that there are things that you honor with a deeper trust in a process without trying to convince people or sell them something. I feel that there are many of you who have been walking this path feeling that you are alone in your spiritual abilities and spiritual gifts, that you're seeing things and you're not getting any external validation. You're not getting anyone who chimes in and says yes or who agrees. It's been lonely. Because developing your spiritual gifts is lonely. It's you and God. It's you and your soul. It's meant to be that beautiful, intense journey of energy that you continue to develop and trust. And that's what you need. That's all you need. And that's part of what you might feel is really strong right now because you've been doing this for years. And it has actually put you in a beautiful place here of being a leader, whether that's in your soul group or in your community or environment. It's allowed you to now maybe offer something back to others so that they can do the same if they choose, if they want to. And because of how the energies have changed, because the veil is now gone, there are going to be more and more people who can actually hear what you have to say. There are going to be more people who are suddenly awake and alert, who are willing to listen. Previously, they weren't. It didn't matter what you were yelling from the rooftops. It didn't matter what you were whispering in the back of the room. The energy we were previously in made more people confused, distracted, disassociated, detached, weren't fully in the present moment or the truth and reality of everything that's been going on, whether that is simply locally or globally. Now people are going to listen. Now there's going to be more energy of curiosity and openness. There are people who are going to be willing to expand their belief systems beyond what they thought was true, or realize I didn't have all the information, or I wasn't so sure about that, but now I want to learn. Now I'm open. So as we emerge out of this Piscean fog, that again has been strong since 2003. More people are going to be ready to learn something new, to begin with curiosity, to ask questions, and to look at things, especially in ourselves, that we haven't been able to accurately see. That's a big part of how the veil is gone and it's changing our perceptions, not only of what's going on, but I'm thinking more specifically the perception of yourself and how you can feel perhaps more solid and strong in what you've been developing since 2003. This is part of the shift that we're experiencing with people, with events and circumstances, with jobs, that maybe you're realizing, wow, I was not seeing that accurately, or that served me at that time. Now it doesn't. My energy is different. My needs are different. I'm ready for a change. And so that is going to be a big part of what we move through here over the next few months as people become more awake and alert to themselves and to their needs. There's also going to be more turnover, again, in the kinds of people that we connect with and relate to, simply because the frequency match is more important than ever. I have my 7 close girlfriends, and we talk about this stuff. And we talk about it quite often, and I love hearing their wisdom about it because we're on the same page, but they're also allowing space for individual growth, both in ourselves and in the friendships. And so that's important to notice too, is that people are going to be growing in new ways. And do you have the ability to open up the energy between you to allow them to do so? Or do you feel that the energy might be too narrow or sort of like at capacity? Do you have people like that where you're like, we're just at capacity in our connection? I don't know if it can go much further. So that could be something that you're reviewing as well, because this is going to be a time of such forward moving growth that you'll realize who is moving forward with you at the same rate or the same pace. Now, it's not a negative thing. It's simply honoring how each person is here to move through the world. And so even if there's a separation or time apart, it could be good, right? That could be a beautiful gift for each person's growth journey and simply an honoring of what the individual needs. And then there could be other people that you just realize, these are not people who are trustworthy or they have other intentions. I'm thinking about people who are always looking for their 15 minutes of fame by any means necessary, like they'll piggyback on your name just to get attention or to try to get money. There's always those scammy people who are trying to grab at anything. And then there's people who think they can get away with things. So we're going to see a lot of that too. People who think they can keep doing the same thing and you're standing there looking at them like, I fully see everything you're doing. The only person you're deceiving is yourself. I actually remember years ago when Neptune first moved into Pisces, I was in contact with some family members, and one family member, she works for the NSA. She's a spy. She works for the National Security Agency. And so there were always the stories that she told about what she did, but I always had my spidey senses up about what's really going on, behind the scenes. And her energy was always interesting because it was like she was either trying to be normal and to fit in and tell a certain story and just come across like any person you'd know. But then her energy would shift, and I always read it as guilt. And there was this guiltiness because of what she had access to and probably what she had been involved in. And her guilt at least was honest. It was honest when I felt that in her. But she would use her professional resources to track down like family members or to look into things. And one day she said something to me that I had only said to one of my brothers in an email. And so basically she revealed to me that she was reading my emails and she had access to that. And even though I had suspected it, it was basically confirmed. And these are not family members that I want in my life because if they're not trustworthy, if they don't take accountability or responsibility, then it's clear to me that that lack of ethics and moral character is coming through loud and strong. And so even though they're family, there's big choices we have to make, right? About other people, what they're choosing, what they think they're getting away with or what they can hide behind. But that's all ending. And so my family was not interested in being connected to them anymore. So they became outcasts, unfortunately, simply because my family values certain character traits, including honesty. That's just how the cookie crumbles at times. And if your profession is deception, people are just going to have some built-in questions about what you do for a living, right? And how you use your resources, your tools, and how that affects your character. These are exactly the kinds of energies we're going to see more readily in people. You can't hide behind a lot of words and trying to talk your way out of things. That's over. Now we are reading energy. Now we are seeing things. And as we read energy, we are feeling into what's accurate, what's true. Where do I need to ask more questions to get some clear understandings and information? Where do I need to have a conversation with someone to hear their side of things or understand what they are going through or what their intentions are? I mean, yes, there are people in our lives, like very good friendships and connections, that we're going to have some important conversations to discuss or clarify misunderstandings. That's just built into any good relationship. But with the veil being lifted, if there isn't truth and honesty on the table, you're going to know sooner than later, and you're going to feel it and sense it. And this is just going to be a theme that we're going to be mastering here over the next number of years, especially. So the veil is gone. And are you feeling it? Are you feeling that change in yourself? Are you seeing yourself perhaps in a new light or seeing your world with new eyes? For some people, this is going to be tower moments if your world has been built on illusions, untruths, and quicksand. For other people, you might sense that you're much clearer on a number of things here, and you're so glad you've been developing your intuition and trusting yourself more. So I hope this is validating for anything you are sensing and feeling in yourself, that it can also help you connect some dots of what has been happening in your life since 2003 as the parade of planets moved through Pisces, and now Saturn completes its journey in Pisces, bringing a strong closure to karmic lessons, spiritual lessons, healing themes, unconsciousness, areas of life where you've given away your power, where you've been detached from source, where you have lost a part of yourself to something or someone or a situation. Whatever the case may be, this is a turning point. So it's not simply the fact that Saturn is entering Aries or re-entering Aries and joining Neptune there. but we're closing out this ongoing Piscean theme. And now we're ready to move forward with greater personal responsibility, integrity, confidence, strength, self-awareness, and empowered choices. And all of those qualities look really gorgeous on you with your lasso of truth. Just saying. So thank you for joining me for today's show. I hope this episode has supported you in feeling and trusting this change that we're in. I know we're in a lot of changes, but I hope this also is beautifully validating of your own journey, as always. So I'll be back on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for a new podcast episode. As always, thank you so much for your time, energy, and presence. I'm so grateful for you as a community. I'm so grateful for your wisdom and everything you share in the comments. Thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to where we're going here in 2026. Take good care. Have a beautiful weekend, and I'll see you back here soon.